When it comes to muscle cars, some are faster, some are louder, some are simply more outrageous, but I dare you to find a muscle car that is more collectible, more popular than the 1969 Camaro Z28. Hi there, Rick DeBrule with another chapter in the automotive evolution. And while normally I'm at the Martin Auto Museum in Phoenix, this month I'm on a road trip. I'm at the California Auto Museum in Sacramento. And while they have more than 130 cars, I would argue that this car right here may be the most important muscle car in their collection, the 1969 Camaro Z28. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can that be? I mean, it only has a 302 cubic inch engine, while big blocks were screaming down the drag strips and around Daytona back then. And the Z28 isn't exactly even rare. I mean, more than 20,000 of these were built that year. But here we are, more than 6 decades later, and the 69 Z28 is one of the most sought-after automobiles on the planet. But before we tell that story, make sure you like and subscribe. And in the comments below, let me know what I got right and what I got wrong. There's always something I get wrong. And let me know if you think the Z28 is the king of collector cars or just an overhyped bow tie. All right, let's tell you the story of the Z28. And of course, we have to start a few years earlier with the brand new 1967 Camaro. The Camaro may have been a couple years late to the pony car battle, but it arrived with plenty of style and substance. Its chassis was more modern than what was under the Mustang, and its shape, well, it had more curves. The 220,000 Camaros sold in 1967 were less than half of the Mustang sales, but it was a solid start that would grow over the next few years. One option that was often overlooked in 1967 was called the Special Performance Package, Regular Production Order, RPO, Z28. It existed for just one reason, to race in the Trans Am series. You got a 302 cubic inch engine, special suspension, mufflers, radiator, some other goodies, all for about $358, not counting the other mandatory options like disc brakes. Chevrolet was not officially involved in racing back then, but they were happy to sell you a car that you could go race in. About 600 buyers chose the Z28 option that first year. And when Mark Donohue and Roger Penske won the Trans Am Championship in 1968 with the Camaro, well, Z28s jumped to more than 7,000 the following year. Which brings us to 1969. After 2 years of a body that was basically the same, Chevy wanted to update Camaro styling, even though they knew that it was only going to be used for just a single year because it was going to change completely in 1970. The result was a more aggressive shape with a sharply pointed front grille and what I call speed lines along the front fenders and the rear fenders. Overall, it looked lower and wider, and the Z28 package, well, that had firmly arrived. More than 20,000 buyers shelled out the $458, along with the cost of the other mandatory options, to own a car like the one that Mark Donohue would use to dominate the Trans Am that year. It's the current auction prices, though, that really make this car a legend. The best 1969 Z28s regularly bring serious money, and rare combinations can climb even higher. But value alone doesn't explain the obsession. People aren't just chasing these cars because they're more expensive. They're expensive because people keep chasing them. Let's walk around and take a closer look at the styling of our 1969 Camaro Z28. And as I mentioned, it was an all-new body for 1969. Well, I guess I shouldn't say all new. There were a few carryovers, the hood, the trunk lid, the roof. Those were the same, but everything else seemed to be pretty much different, like the fenders, for example. You had what I call these speed lines that go down after the fenders. Some people call them eyebrow lines. Also had a different front nose, front fascia as well. If you got the non-RS version, it had a little bit of a nice V shape to it. This one is the RS version, has these concealed headlights. They're vacuum operated. You also have the option of getting headlight washers right there, so that was another option. This has the cowl induction hood. That was a $79 option. About 10,000 were sold, and you can only get these if you got a Z28 or an SS, but it was not a required element on the Z28. The rally stripes, though, those did come with every Z28, but you could get a delete option for that at no charge. So if you didn't want rally stripes, you didn't have to have them on your car. Of course, this has the rally wheels. That color right there is Fathom Green, which is an absolute great color. Heavy-duty brakes, front discs were standard in the Z28. For part of the year, front and rear discs were optioned as a $500 option, but only about 200 of those were sold. The spoiler in the back, this was an option for $32 on Camaros that year. And of course, the taillights have a different look to them. They have these 3 elements as opposed to the 1968, we just had the 2 elements right there. Love the big Z28. And by the way, Z28 was not a marketing ploy. It's not like they thought, oh, we're going to call something Z because it's going to be cool. This was a regular production order. It just so happens that in the Z's, item number 28 in 1967 was going to be that performance package. And the name simply stuck, and people after a while wanted the Z28. So it wasn't marketing, it was just a random thing within the regular production order that they were coming up with. But of course, what's really cool about this is the fact you've got this 302 emblem right here that tells everybody what you've got under the hood. This wasn't going to win at drag strips, but what this was going to do was going to help in racing. And of course, the ability to go fast and then turn right or left is really what made the Z28 a very special car, especially in the hands of people like Roger Penske and Mark Donohue, who could take this car and transform it into a race-winning vehicle. The heart of the 1969 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 was this legendary 302 cubic inch small block V8 created for just one reason: racing. You know, Chevy wanted to compete in the Trans Am series, and the rules back then, well, they limited engine displacement to 305 cubic inches. And rather than design an entirely new engine, what engineers did was they took the 4-inch bore of the 327 cubic inch V8 block with the shorter 3-inch stroke of the 283 crankshaft. The result was a 302, a high-revving, small block that fit perfectly within the rules while delivering serious performance. Officially, Chevrolet rated the 302 at 290 horsepower, but some estimates actually put the output above 350. The engine came standard with a high-performance, solid lifter camshaft, an 11-to-1 compression ratio, a forged steel crankshaft, and a 4-barrel Holley carburetor mounted on an aluminum high-rise intake manifold. It was paired with the free-flowing camel hump cylinder heads and dual exhaust, all designed to maximize breathing and top-end performance. Buyers, however, could also get the optional upgrades, like the famous cross-ram dual 4-barrel carburetor setup like we have right here, which bumped the output by another 100 horsepower. Now, those were not factory-installed options, but they were sold over-the-counter by Chevy dealers. If you wanted more horsepower, though, than a non-Z28 could give you, well, you could get a 396 with 375 horses. And of course, there are the now famous Copo cars, the central office production order cars that were able to squeeze 427 cubic inches under the hood. But if you wanted a 302, there was only one way to get it. You had to order a Z28. It was not a regular engine that you could get as an option on other Camaros. Well, stepping inside our Z28 from 1969, what we find is the same basic layout that most Camaros got back then. The Z28 really didn't change very much. The dashboard in all Camaros did get a pretty significant redesign, though, for 1969. The year before, in 1968, they used rounded bezels in the dash. For 1969, well, Camaro switched to a squared-off look around the gauges. And I'm not sure why, but they decided to put a clock in the center with the speedometer and the tachometer off to each side. In previous years, and in the early part of 1969, tachometers were an option, but they became a required part of the Z28 package around mid-year. And beware, if someone tells you that the Z28s only had a 7,000 RPM tach or an 8,000 RPM, there were actually 3 different tachometers used that had 3 different maximums and different red lines depending upon when they were produced during 1969. One thing you could not get, though, in a Z28 for 1969 was air conditioning. Now remember, the package was designed around racing, and AC simply wasn't necessary. In fact, I don't believe that AC was even available on a Z28 until 1973. With the 1969 model, the Z28 had pretty much secured its reputation as one of the most respected performance cars of the muscle car era. But you know, its story was far from over. The second generation Camaro arrived in 1970 with smoother bodywork, a more European-inspired road race feel. And the Z28, well, it still stood for premier performance. While horsepower waned in the 1970s, the Z28 badge survived. It moved beyond its Trans Am purpose to a more marketing-inspired line. It wasn't always the ultimate in performance, but it was the car that a lot of drivers lusted over. And this 1969 model is something that many collectors see as the purest expression of the formula. Lightweight, high revving, race-focused. Later versions have offered more horsepower, they've offered more technology, but this 1969 carries that pure expression of style and performance. And today, well, a 69 Z28 is pretty much the benchmark by the way all later Z28s are judged. And when you look at its ability to command greater prices decade after decade, you can make a good argument for why this is the most popular muscle car of all time. And I want to thank the California Auto Museum for hosting us this month.